Hello, and thank you very much for tuning in to the podcast series by the New Silk Road Project. I'm your host today, Charles Stevens, the founder of the New Silk Road Project. This series is dedicated to understanding and raising awareness of one of the most important development strategies of the 21st century, China's Belt and Road Initiative. The centerpiece of the New Silk Road Project, an initiative supported by Jeep, CSIS, Magellan Capital, the University of St Andrews and Shira, was to travel the course of the Silk Road economic belt from London to Yiwu in eastern China, interviewing the key actors and academics along its course. We will have to apologise in advance for some of the tangential moments in this podcast series, and also the variable quality of audio footage. We do hope this series sheds important light into China's growing global presence and the significant changes taking place across Eurasia. Lydia Parkhomick is a senior research fellow at the Eurasian Research Institute in Almaty. She has a focus on the Caspian axis and issues surrounding this region. With her, we talked about the revival of Russian seaports, China's interest in the energy sector, the opportunities emerging from the potential of settlements between the Caspian Five, and Uzbekistan's desire to gain greater influence despite not sitting on the Caspian littoral.
Yes, my name is Lydia Parkhomick. I'm working in Eurasian Research Institute since 2014. For previous 7 years, I was working in Kazakhstan Institute for Strategic Studies under the president of Republic of Kazakhstan. That's why it was pro-governmental institution. And I'm a specialist in international relations, but the sphere of my interest is focused on the Caspian studies, Caspian region, and all which connect with the Caspian transport roads, energy transportation, port development infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So if you can find the word Caspian, it means that I'm interested in. So I started to focus on this since graduation of my university. Actually, one of my diploma actually was focused on the Caspian region and military security issues. I continued this focus during my career, and I hope that I will focus on it in future, because we now in Kazakhstan we are waiting for forthcoming summit on the Caspian summit in Aktau this August, in the middle of August. I hope it will be finally final gathering of 5 presidents of our 5 littoral states, and finally we will sign the convention on the legal status of the Caspian Sea. So I hope that my expertise will be, demandful from the governmental officials and also for broad public.
And one of the exciting recent developments in the Caspian region was the BTK railway. Mm-hmm. Since its opening, though, the transportation freightage volumes haven't been what has been expected. What do you think can be done in the Caspian region to help develop it as a transportation link?
Actually, we need to understand what is the transportation link along the Caspian Sea or around the Caspian Sea. It's very problematic, starting from the very simple issue as the weather conditions. Probably you haven't heard, but sometimes it took you for 2 or 3 days to enter the Caspian Sea ports, for example, the seaport of Aktau, because of windy weather. Simple windy weather just prevent you from your schedule, and to overcome this, it's almost impossible. Other things that you can do, and to change the location of the port. Actually, Kazakhstan started to do it since 2015. We launched the project Kurik Port, and now, it's developing, growing very fast, comparing with Aktau, of course, and this barrier could be overcome because of relocation of port facilities. Another issue is cargo flows. We need to find additional cargo flows to make our port and railway infrastructure to work at its full capacity. Actually, the main issue was to find cargo flows from China. But if you look at all official documentation, only 5 test trains from China via the so-called Nomad Express line was held during during the period of existence of Trans-Caspian International Transport Road, and you probably heard about it. So of course it was more than 5, but so-called mass media, they only focused on these 5. If we look at the annual report of this organization, we could find that 200 trains passed through this line in 2017, but it's still much more work needs to be done to improve this number of trains which could be passed through this Trans-Caspian corridor. Even after launching of Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway line, there is still some problem of putting into exploitation. Most problems, unfortunately, they concentrated on the Turkish part. Some kind of difficulties on electrification, some kind of difficulties of passengers transportation. They even didn't launch it today. They plan to start work on it in a 6 months period only. The only containers, what kind of goods we usually can find on this Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway line? Grain from Kazakhstan. Actually, it's a major thing that is transshipped via this road, not China goods, as everyone expected, actually. And we need time. We need time to convince our Chinese partners that it will be more profitable for you, to use this Trans-Caspian corridor to put your cargo flows from China, Shanghai or Laliangan ports to European customers. Because right now, Russian road is still more beneficial in terms of railway transportation. Because of tariffs, because of barriers, because of so-called ecological factor, environmental factor, as I told you before, on example of Aktau seaport. But still, we can see that potential is great. I mean, it's expected that by 2020 we will have 2,000 TEUs, 20-foot containers per year, and this amount will grow by exponent year by year. It's our hope, dream, and so on and so forth, and it really could happen. There is no such a big deal because we have infrastructure, and we really have opportunity to deal with China. But if the last thing, if you look at this regular member of this Trans-Caspian corridor, there is no China partners. Unfortunately for us, because China is not involved in the process of discussion, they only like a business partner. Okay, we will use it. Will you give us a good tariff? Okay, you can. We will send a train, something like that.
And you made an important point about the development of Kuruk port and also the need for greater efficiency along the middle corridor. Do you see the Caspian? Do you see Kazakhstan and Kuruk port as being having the greatest potential for future growth, or do you see Turkmenistan, Russian seaports, perhaps even through Iran and the Astara rail bridge as being more exciting opportunities?
For Kazakhstan, actually, we had one of the largest amount of turnover of the Caspian Sea. Still, we have all about 20% of all cargo flows via Trans-Caspian roads from west to south in any direction, almost 20%. But amount in figures, I mean, in percentage, it's almost 20, but in real figures, it's decreasing every year. The only ports turnover of fish is increasing, it's ports of Azerbaijan. Unfortunately for us, I mean, for Kazakhstan, there is no actually problem for Azerbaijan to increase the capacity, to increase the turnover, because it's the only largest Baku and Alat ferry terminal. It's really international hub. I mean, for transportation of everything, for ferry, for grain, for oil, and so on and so forth. From our side, we want to be as a transit, but and Baku, it also wants to be a transit point. So two transit points should be involved in the road. But we also have products which should be transported to our Western partners. So double transit, it's for Azerbaijan. So there is no problem for them to increase. For example, in 2017, they increased the turnover of the Caspian ports to 10.7 million tons, from 9 in 2016, from 8 in 2015, and so on and so forth. For Kazakhstan, it's vice versa. We decrease our port capacity. For example, in 2017, the total turnover of Kazakhstani ports on the Caspian Sea decreased to 5.5 million tons. But in our best years, we have 12. It's because of oil. I mean, if we start to transshipment of oil via the Trans-Caspian roads, it doesn't matter to where. I mean, to Baku via Baku-Tbilisi-Jahan, or to Makhachkala via Novosibirsk, with further joining pipeline to Novosibirsk. It doesn't matter, actually. We totally will increase our turnover of our seaports. But now it's more profitable to transport our oil via KTK. Mm-hmm.
And looking at a oil-producing nation such as Iran, they've been pushing quite strongly to develop their maritime ports on the Caspian. How do you think that this will affect the trade picture on these routes?
Caspian ports, they are not the large amount of all port transportation infrastructure in the country. I mean, in Iran, only 5% of all turnover is for Caspian ports. But it's increasing. It's still increasing. For example, if we compare 6 months period in 2018, it was how many? There was an increase. There was an increase comparing the same period in 2017.
How do you think that the reinstating of sanctions, though, recently by the US will affect that?
Yes, actually, if we look at the total turnover, there was dramatic decrease comparing to 2017, the same amount, the same period, for about 12, almost 15 on different ports, of course, ports to ports, but in some cases it's minus 30%. For example, for oil cargo, minus 20. For grain, it's minus 30% decrease in transshipment. So in total, it's almost comparing 1 million ton already decreased. Since the beginning of the year. So it will decrease further, of course, after this November deadline from the United States of America for stopping importing Iranian oil from the Iranian seaports, and now we also can find some tankers full of oil, but there is no customer to send it to. But for Caspian ports, the only and the major destination for Caspian cargoes from Iran is Russia. Actually, if these two countries will continue to develop their politically friendly relations, there will be no decrease. Because they are not specialized on oil transportation. There is not a big deal for, Russian-Iranian trade. And, Caspian trade, it's the only way how Russia and Iran actually have a trade. That's why decrease, it's not a big deal. Iran finally started to restart. They restarted oil swaps from Turkmenistan. I haven't found information that could confirm this statement. Only such notice and statement from officials, but not on statistic data. But I hope that they are not lying to us. That they really started swap operations. Almost 2.3 billion barrels. Sorry. Since the beginning of this operation in August 2017, already put via Nekap seaport to Tehran refinery. I hope that it will be really great. For Iran, to restart such kind of deals, because they are not. We are not talking about import of Iranian oil, but for Turkmenistan, actually, it's just export of their own oil. That's why it's not a problem. Actually, it also can be a way out for Iran, because when we are talking about swap operations, it means that other customers who will get Iranian oil, by documentation, it will be not Iranian oil, it will be Kazakhstani, Russian, Turkmenistani, even Azerbaijani oil. So it will be like a way out. But still, there is much more obstacles to be overcome, to restart it from the Kazakhstani side and from the Azerbaijani side.
And recently there's been a decline, particularly in the Russian seaports in the north. With this revival and revitalization of trade from Iran that you've suggested, how far do you think this can go towards kickstarting?
Yeah, actually, they already started to increase their turnover, and there is no anymore any decline in Russian seaports. Starting from January 2018, there is a constant increase in turnover via Makhachkala port. Because of they, permit to transshipment of Kazakhstani oil via this pipeline. So we are back to Makhachkala, and increase in oil transshipment via Makhachkala, increase in oil transshipment via Ola seaport. The only port which turnover of fish is still decreasing is Astrakhan, but. Probably you have heard that in September 2017, Russia adopted a strategy for Caspian seaport development. And starting from this point of view, they will, establish another seaport in Caspisk. Yes, they already started some infrastructure development there. They probably they focused mostly for the first stage. At the first stage, they focused mostly on relocation of Caspian flotilla to the Caspic seaport, like a new sea base for the Caspian military group of Russian navies. The second phase, it will be development of port infrastructure for trade, for ferry, and for other cargo flows transshipment. And we can see that it's working, actually, yes. Probably it's working not because only because of adaptation of this strategy, but the whole positive economic situation in Russia, and some kind of positive transshipment and developments in Kazakhstani economic, because we also one of the partners on trade and transshipment of goods. Also, there is a good opportunity for Lukoil, to transship their oil, which is actually explored at Karchagin and Filanovsky oil field. After this government in Dagestan was changed, with some criminal cases even admitted. And new government actually looks more positive and have a more good image, which also puts some, positive environment for business environment that at least he or the whole his administration will not, make us fool and there will be no problems with transshipment. There will be no criminals. There is no corruption. Of course, there will be, but the degree will be much more lower.
And looking at one of Kazakhstan's neighbours, Uzbekistan, although it doesn't sit on the Caspian littoral, how can it influence the development of both the Caspian Sea and the region in general?
Actually, sometimes I started to think that Uzbekistan is very eager to develop its own so-called Caspian strategy. Of course, it's not something that will be adopted by some separate document or resolution or decree, but still. For example, Uzbekistan make a few agreements with Turkmenistan on the joint development of and exploration in the Caspian Sea. Uzbekistan also made some three or two times, I don't remember exactly, consultation with Trans-Caspian Corridor members, especially Kazakhstan-Timirjali, Kazakhstan Railways, on the possibility to use this corridor for transportation of goods which are produced in Uzbekistan. Also, Uzbekistan is dealing with Azerbaijan on the same issues that with Turkmenistan, also production and exploration activity in the Caspian Sea. So we can see that they want to use every opportunity to get access to the Caspian shore for getting oil and gas from littoral states inside the country and put the cargo flows of Uzbekistani-made goods outside the country via the Caspian Road. Of course, it will be much more problematic for Uzbekistani government to use this opportunity because of lack of financial resources. For example, if we look at China, they are ready to pay, to overpay even, comparing with transportation by sea and transportation by rail. The difference sometimes it's $5,000 per container or even much more. Uzbekistan could not afford such kind of cover this difference, but actually Uzbekistan have no sea. There's no opportunity to compare. There's only option. That's why they will find sources to find funds, to use this railroad opportunity, despite some problems in infrastructure and even weather conditions.
So, with that said, how effective can Uzbekistan be as an alternative transport corridor, eventually through Kazakhstan or Turkmenistan?
Probably it's not an issue of this mid-term perspective for Uzbekistan to become such kind of alternative, to become the second or third road through which Chinese goods could be transported in future. In long-term perspectives, of course, especially if Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and China will finally agree on this railway project, which will connect these three countries. And after this, and even after this, it will be interesting even for Tashkent, to connect this line with Turkmeni railways for to pass flows, cargo flows. Even it doesn't matter from China, from Uzbekistan, or from Kyrgyzstan via Turkmenbashi. It will be much more easy, or maybe via Kurik, which is much more closer to Uzbekistan comparing to Aktau, for example. So even if this perspective, it will be still demand for to get in access to Caspian shore.
And you mentioned earlier China's involvement in the region. How have you seen in the last couple of years have you seen any relocation of financing and investment in the Caspian region?
China is interested in energy sphere. There is no need to explain even further that resources development and exploration, both in Turkmenistan and in Kazakhstan, all majority lion shares of investments it's in energy and exploration. China recently bought the shares in Kashagan, the largest oil field in Kazakhstan. It has more than 80% of oil, of shares in this project, and China is also really eager to get gas actually from Central Asia. Maybe oil it's not so critical, but gas it is. For Turkmenistan, you probably know that 3 lines of so-called Turkmenistan-China gas pipeline. It's working, not at its full capacity, but it's still working. And finally, we joined the gas transshipment via this pipeline in amount of 5 billion cubic meters of gas per year since October, I suppose, 2017. So at least 1 billion cubic meters we already purchased to China in 2017. It's actually a great deal. It's because of Kashagan development. So we finally get free gas, which could be transported to China's direction. So in terms of investments, exploration is major destination for this money. All others, it's infrastructure, of course, but for China, Caspian region and Caspian facilities, port facilities, roads, railways, they are not so, they are not in the list of priority. Maybe it's on a list, but not at the top. Maybe at the end, because they are not concentrated actually on strengthening Trans-Caspian corridor. As we already mentioned, China is not actually involved in the process of negotiations. They only watching what we are doing, and if they need something to send very quickly, or some kind of test trains to pass it through, but for regular transportation, they are not ready. Actually, Beijing is not ready to involve and to consider the Trans-Caspian corridor as a way for regular transshipment. Unfortunately for us, because Russia is more preferable. Still, Russia is more preferable. So when we are talking about investment to Caspian region, only an energy sphere, and also little projects which could be involved in a so-called Belt and Road Initiative. Industries, transportation from China to Kazakhstan or to Uzbekistan or Turkmenistan, some kind of transportation improvement inside the region, but not such kind of, dramatic changes. They're actually good for us, but for China, it's like, okay, we will give you money. We will, and we agree to sponsor your infrastructure investment, but you should do, and then the list that you should do. This list sometimes it's not corresponding with our actually priority, but still we need to find a compromise.
And given the increased interest from China in the Caspian Sea, albeit slowly and gradually, what would be the feasibility of establishing a military presence?
There is no need for China to establish military presence, actually. The only thing that China is interested in getting security is Afghanistan, within the framework of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So China as like a navy state, I mean navy power, focused on their own problematic China Sea with like a tensions with China, with United States of America, and even Taiwan, and all other issues which involved in this process. That's why there is no need for China to enter the Caspian region. By the way, even they want to, there is no legal opportunity for that, because if I hope that the Convention on the Legal Status of the Sea will be signed this August in Octao. According to draft text of this convention, the parties confirmed that no other parties, I mean third parties, could not involved on security issues in the region. There should be no military base of third states on the Caspian shore, and no ships under flags of third countries. It doesn't matter, trade, trade, I mean, or military navy should be located in the Caspian Sea. That's why China is out of business.
And focusing on public perceptions and awareness in Kazakhstan towards China, how do you see these as shifted or changed in the last 5 years, and how do you think they may develop? I'm not a specialist on China, but in my own opinion, there is no actually development. We didn't start to to hate or to love China more actually at the same level. Since the beginning, I mean, since independence in 1991, we became open for world and for Chinese citizens, for Chinese businesses, and so on and so forth. And starting from the time, our citizens became, concerned about the Chinese threats, which is actually potential. Because migration, if you look at the migration figures, we don't have much amount of Chinese working here or migrating here, but we need to define two levels of relations between China and Kazakhstan. Upper level, I mean state-to-state relations. If we look at the state-to-state relations, everything is perfect. There is no misunderstanding. There is no concerns. We're actually ready to communicate. Our presidents, they actually could be even called friends. They have really friendship, and every visit of Nazarbayev to Beijing resulted in another amount of loans, credits, and so on and so forth. So China is a very friendly nation in terms of upper level. But when we go to people-to-people level, there's a misunderstanding because of our cultural difference. Even being located in closeness, I mean, we are neighbors, we are not communicating much. We didn't, during the Soviet time, we didn't communicate much during the previous epochs. And actually for now, even for, if you look at the consulate, procedure of getting visa for Kazakhstani citizens to visit China and vice versa, it's so problematic, actually, especially for business purposes. Why, for how long, which purpose? It took really quite a long time, to get this visa. And because of this reason, sometimes for us it's very problematic to find Chinese expert who is ready to come here to even join our events, conferences, roundtables, because process of getting visa without some support, visa support, it will be even more problematic than for business, even for tourist trips. So for people to people, it's quite not the issue of concern, but still some kind of xenophobia is still here. But we need to confess that it was cultivated. It was cultivated by the Soviet authorities during the 20th century. This image of such stranger
which is dangerous and which could be hard to understand because of their cultural difference. It's something that was put in our heads because of mass media of the during the Soviet period, but it's still alive. There's no Soviet Union, but some such kind of opinions from getting and taking from this period, we still use it in our minds.
And what do you see as the single greatest challenge to the Belt and Road Initiative over the next 5 years?
When, of course, from China's perspective, they will find. I suppose that the answer will be different from mine. But I like the research that one of our European colleagues made. They make a map on all 60 countries involved in Belt and Road Initiative, putting on the scores. Is it country problematic or not for China to deal with within the framework of this initiative? With Central Asia, Kazakhstan, it's less problematic country for China for 10 criteria, including political stability, taxation, corruption, business activity, and so on and so forth. So 10 criteria. We are in the middle, which something in the middle from 1 to 10, from 100. So we are in the middle, something in the middle. But Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, very close to 100. I mean, most problematic countries for China to deal with in Central Asia. Even Russia is problematic, but and of course, less problematic countries is European countries. The destination point and less problematic. So if we look at this map, actually every country is problematic for China to deal with in order to implement all the initiative within this project in a complex way. So I don't have opportunity to call the exact problem points for every state. So case by case option, it will be more useful in this case. But as for Kazakhstan, we are less problematic in any case, even in political stability. Because if we look at governmental interrelationship, as I've told you before, Nazarbayev and Xi Jinping, they actually really trust each other. And this trust spread all governmental senior officials also. But actually this problem is on upper level. It's not a deal with business to business on people to people communication, despite the fact that actually China insists this is the first priority is people to people communication. But in our case, it's not like working like that. The upper level is priority for us. So in this case, for us, it will be no problem to realize all projects that China just ready to implement here, because I suppose that in any case we will find a compromise. In any case, even if this project will be terrible from some kind of expertise from Kazakhstan, China is eager to communicate, and maybe they will find some kind of solution to make us more concerned about it.
And if you were to summarize the Belt and Road Initiative in one word, what is that word for you?
Investments. Investments, totally. I mean, of course, the country, if you, for example, ask the same question, and the experts from, I don't know, in European Union, they will maybe, I don't know, transportation, maybe connectivity, it will be something like that. But I'm telling you that our expectation, actually, we hope to get from this realization of this, so investments.